It is a very, very special episode of the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast because we have a very special guest. I am Anthony Cosenza, joined by my co-host John Sheeran. John, I know we're revved up. We've got a very special guest joining us back on the program. Bengals legend Ken Anderson. How you doing, Mr. Anderson? Hanging in there?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Can't complain.
Well. Yeah, I mean, we're stoked to have you back on the show. It's been a little while since we've had you, and sorry to hound you again.
Never a problem.
Well, we are very excited to have you back. We want to reminisce a bit about your career, especially this time of year with Super Bowl around the corner. We want to get a little bit of your memories. We want to talk some Cincinnati Bengals and the current state of that team, and maybe take a couple of fan questions as well. But, of course, we also want to talk about your the Ken Anderson Alliance, the charity that you are heading up, and we want to hear how our fans can get involved, and we'll be promoting that for sure. Ken, this time of year is always kind of special for Bengals fans. I'm sure it's very, very special for you. We're coming off the 40-year anniversary of the Freezer Bowl. I guess we can start there since championship weekend just ended, and we're heading into the Super Bowl. There's a lot of talk and a lot of questions I'm sure you've fielded over the years about, well, how cold was it and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that I wondered about this game was the mindset of you guys going into it, playing the Chargers. I'm from Southern California, so I follow a bit the Chargers and their move from San Diego to LA. And, you beat them handily on their home turf earlier that year, and then you get them at home later in the year. The weather is ridiculous. I guess, when did the confidence level for the Bengals in that game really start to rev up? Was it after? Was it right before kickoff, even with the weather? Was it at halftime when you had the lead? When were you guys feeling really good about that game as you went into it?
Well, I don't know, but I think it was kind of in pregame warmups. I think it was the confidence in our head coach, Forrest Gregg. One of the things that he instilled in us was not only physical toughness, but mental toughness. And one of the things that I've always said, and it's, if you go from cold to hot, it's a physical aspect. And I went through that in 1973, my first playoff game that, we went down and played Miami in the Orange Bowl. And it was very cold in Cincinnati. The week we practiced, we went down to Miami and got that 85 humid degree day. And literally it was a physical thing. And you could feel us hit the wall about the end of the first quarter, and losing to a great Miami team. But when you go to cold, it's more of a mental thing. And Forrest Gregg really made us mentally tough. And I think that's what gave us a lot of confidence.
So that game was, I believe, January 10th of that 1982 winter, but you guys played in a home playoff game the week before against the Bills. Was that describe the difference between the weather in that game and then what ended up being the Freezer Bowl?
Well, that was 55 degrees. That was a balmy day in Cincinnati, for that late in the year. And, you mentioned it earlier, and I know, Miami came, it was like 89 degrees in Miami when they played the week before. And now it's minus 59 and what the temperature difference was. But as you alluded to, we played San Diego earlier in the year. And had they beat us in their home park, the championship game would have been in San Diego. So we deserve the right to play in that weather.
Speaking with a man that really doesn't need an introduction amongst Bengals fans, number 14, Ken Anderson, legendary Bengals quarterback, joining us as part of our Super Bowl coverage as we, as a show, try and bring you all kinds of different coverages and interviews on the Orange and Black Insider. Ken, transitioning a bit to your experience in the Super Bowl, I guess I'm dating myself a little bit, but I was not quite around yet when that game was played. But I know I rewatched it, know quite a bit about it. And, I kind of went over that game again today. I started the interview by asking you, your mindset and the players' mindset going into the Freezer Bowl, given the elements and who you were playing and all of that. I guess, when I look back at that game, you guys were down big at halftime, and there was a lot of things. It started off great for you. You got the fumble recovery, and then couple turnovers, some issues, and 49ers kind of put it on you, and now you're down 20-0 at half. What's the message in the locker room at that point? Because, you guys come out kind of roaring in the second half and almost pull this one out, and would have been a legendary win for this franchise.
Well, it was very quiet in the locker room. I think the coaches kind of went and huddled up and left the players to stew by ourselves. And, we just realized, we weren't playing, our best football. I think we had 4 turnovers in the first half. And, you alluded, we got the opening fumble and got down inside the 5-yard line. And I threw an interception on 3rd down that was intercepted, and that led to their first touchdown. And it was interesting. Years later, the guy that intercepted that was their safety, Dwight Hicks. And I was at a celebrity golf tournament with him. And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" He said, "I'm surprised you're talking to me." I said, "Well, not that I remember, but, and he said, "I got to tell you one thing." He said, "I blew the coverage." He said, "I did not, for some reason, did not go with my man to the corner. We'd had the perfect play call that they were playing inside technique, and Isaac Curtis, we were in a 3-by-1, and Isaac Curtis was the 3rd guy out to the left, and we were kind of doing an outside pick to bring him underneath. And Dwight, I thought it was a touchdown, and Dwight Hicks was standing there to make the interception. But it was, I felt better later knowing that while I read the coverage white, it was just a blown coverage on his part. But there was that, and then in the second quarter went down and hit Chris, right around the 10-yard line, and was a fumble. Mm-hmm. And then, we gave them 6 points right before halftime on, 2 kickoffs that we mishandled. And it led to 2 field goals for them. And so it was, when we came out, we made it respectable, but, you can't have 5 turnovers in a Super Bowl game and expect to win.
So that game was like in your 10th or 11th year in your career, and you had only played in like 2 playoff games before this season. And, now in current day, this is the beginning of that 2-week period preparing for the Super Bowl, which the Chiefs and Bucs are doing. What was that preparation like with the 2 weeks off and just having those 2 weeks just to focus on one game, the final game of the year? How was that like? I guess the differences between just other playoff games and just other games in your career.
Well, it was a little bit tough for us because we know how cold it was for the AFC Championship game. It was just as cold the next week, but we didn't have any heaters on the sideline and no heated benches. And so we weren't outside a lot to practice. And I think the week before you go to the game is when you've got to get a lot of your preparation in. And, looking back at it, I wish we would have gone somewhere where there was an indoor facility, somewhere where it was warm, that we could have got a good week's work in, because all of a sudden we're at the Super Bowl with all the hoopla. And both teams had to share the Superdome in Pontiac for practice. But that's all of a sudden, that's where we had to get the bulk of our practice work in, because we didn't get a lot in the week before.
Indoor practice facility in the Cincinnati Bengals. Where have I heard that one before? Talking with Ken Anderson. Before I get to my next question here, I would just kind of want to share some of these comments. I don't know if you can see him, Ken. Kevin Reynolds, childhood hero right there, Cincy Jungle. Larry Wilson Jr., good evening, Mr. Anderson. You were the reason I became a Bengals fan, along with the stripes. We'll ask you about the uniform stuff in just a minute, too. And then, of course, Douglas Barrett on Facebook, stating the obvious, you should be in the Hall of Fame among many other deserving candidates. I guess, with both of the Super Bowls that the Bengals participated in the 1980s, one of the major storylines was the whole Bill Walsh, and then, Sam Weish later, but Bill Walsh, your connection with Bill Walsh. What for you, what was that experience like for you, seeing your old coach on the, going against him on the sideline, and, I guess later, after your career, kind of seeing how that developed again later in the 80s, the Bengals going up against him. I guess just kind of your thoughts and reflecting back on going up against Bill Walsh in your specific Super Bowl, and then the Bengals again later that decade.
Well, Bill became a very instrumental person in my career, obviously. Drafting me, I think he was the guy that really pushed for me out of Augustana College, and then starting my second year. And he and I spent countless hours by ourselves, just, a lot of times in the drops, I'm just moving my feet in place to get the rhythm and the throw. And then you walk back, and then you trot. And, and I think that the footwork and the fundamentals were so important to him. And that was kind of the basis, for my career and for my coaching career, the fundamentals, that he taught me. So it was an interesting time. We won the coin flips. We got to practice in the afternoon in San Francisco. I had to practice in the morning because we were both practicing in the same facility, the Pontiac Silverdome. And so as I'm coming in, he's kind of going out, and we would get a chance to say hi and to talk a little bit. And, as sad as I was for us losing, I guess I was happy for him that he won, because he meant a lot to me, in my career. And then I remember, in the game in Miami the next time, and it was a draining game, and somehow, I was, doing the radio broadcast for the game. I was doing some television work as well for the local TV stations in Cincinnati, and I went down and in the locker room for San Francisco and caught up with Bill, and he was in the shower, and he just had his head down, letting the water soak on his head, and you could tell at that point he was just exhausted and about ready to retire.
I think we've all had that shower one or two times in our life. But I think we got to get to some fan questions here in the comments. We have one from Sixer Alex in YouTube, and he's asking, who were your closest pals in the locker room? We remember you talked about Essex Johnson the last time you came on here, but are there any guys from those teams that you really had like a special bond with in the locker room?
Well, I think, number one, it's Dave Lappa, because he and I were roommates for the last part of my career, and he's still one of my closest friends. And, when I came into the league, Bob Trumpy and Bob Johnson, I still stay in good contact with, and, Jimmy Breach. And it's been nice since I've retired from coaching, and I get a chance to get back to Cincinnati a little bit more often, not only for fundraisers for my event, but for other events for my teammates. So, I've been a lot more, I've had a lot more opportunities to be around my former teammates than I had in the past when I was coaching. So that's been one of the joys of retirement, because these guys are great guys. And in fact, I was doing an interview with Dave Lapham for one of my events coming up today. And we had talked about how, back in the 70s that, we didn't have an off-season program because we all had jobs, make enough money. And we had, the season ended, we got jobs for 6 months. And so we went to training camp. My first training camp, I reported July 7th, and we didn't break camp till September 15th. And in those games, we only played 14 games, and the season opened the last Sunday in September. So our off-season program was 9 weeks in Wilmington, Ohio. And so we were, in essence, quarantined up there. But, we practiced twice a day, every day. Every day was in pads, but, we didn't have a weight room. We didn't have ice tubs. And so when practice ended, there was a little cinder block college bar about 2 blocks away from campus, and we'd have about 40 guys go there to grab a beer afterwards. And, we never filmed a practice till 1980 when Forrest Gregg came. And so, after our meetings, our installation meetings, we're there so long, we'd only install one run for the morning practice and one pass for the afternoon practice. So, after that meeting, we'd head out to the local bowling alley, and we'd have a couple of beers and a hamburger. And the closeness of the team, that we developed just by hanging around each other, it's for all of us. And, most of us were married, we had kids, but, I'm at training camp. I can't worry about the bills. I can't worry about getting the grass cut. It's just football, and it's just team. And so the camaraderie and the special times that we had, and that's why those guys are still so close to me.
That's awesome. And for those who have not, for some reason, listened to the last time Ken was on our show, he shared another great story involving some beers, another great story with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got to check out that story too, talking with Ken Anderson, former Cincinnati Bengals quarterback. We talked a little bit.
How about story? I'm going to tell you one more story about the AFC Championship game.
Go for it.
It's the first quarter, and it's the first time we had heated benches. And so I'm sitting there, and we had kicked a field goal, and so we had a 3-0 lead, and so I'm there, and you kind of sit there, and I'm sitting on my hands, and luckily I had my helmet on, and there's little slots for your feet to go into. And so all of a sudden there's a roar of the crowd, and I stand up to see if there's a turnover, and I'm going back in. And I stand up, my feet don't come out of the slots, and I go down. And the first thing that hits is my face mask, and I'm seeing stars. And I'm calling for the trainer, give me smelling salts, give me something. I can't get knocked out of the AFC Championship game falling off the daggone bench. So in the world, somebody would have caught it on a cell phone. And, of course, there's a million cameras for all the games now. Somebody would have had that. And in today's world, I probably would have gone into concussion protocol and not finished the game.
Oh my gosh, I haven't heard that. That's a great one. Wow. Yeah, that would have made headline news for sure. That would have been Twitter headline news for the AFC Championship game if that one was caught. That's awesome.
I hope you don't mind, but normally I do these Zoom happy hours for my foundation. That's Keystones with Kenny. And as my throat gets dry, I do have a Keystone Light. I hope you don't mind if I sip on that while we're doing this.
No, please do. I'm actually a little envious. I wish I had an adult beverage. I'm sticking with a little soda here, but I may
me and Anthony pretty much have to be sober, but you can drink as much as you want.
Before we hopefully we have a few more minutes from you, Ken. We appreciate all the time.
I'm in no hurry. There's nothing on TV coming up for a while. I'm good.
And you've got a Keystone Light in front of you, so you're solid.
Yeah, when that's gone, I'll shut the thing off. I'm good.
That's classic. You went up against Joe Montana. Tom Brady's in the Super Bowl yet again. Before we kind of transition into your thoughts about the team that's been put out there this last year and the one coming up this year, I guess I got to ask you. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of GOAT talk, greatest of all time, and I guess I'd like to, since you specifically went up against Montana in a Super Bowl and Brady's in it again this time of year, I guess that talk kind of comes around. What do you think about that? If you had to pick going before this weekend, personally, I was saying Montana, and again, Tom Brady just kind of said, "Hey, Anthony, take a look at my resume."
Well, I'm going to give you a little background here. Tom Brady is going into the last game of the year for his 10th time. He's looking to win it for the 7th time.
Yep.
There's another professional quarterback, that was in the last game of the year 10 straight years and won 7. Shouldn't he get consideration for the GOAT? That guy was Otto Graham. Now, I think it's modern day that you have to go with Tom Brady. I mean, how many championship games has he played in? It seems like, every year they're there. And, for his career to be in the Super Bowl 10 times, is unbelievable. But, I sent out a tweet today about Otto Graham and let's just not forget about the old guys.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And I feel a little silly not even bringing him into the conversation, but a great point there.
Well, you talk about you weren't born when I was playing, your parents probably weren't even married when Otto was playing. And the thing is that I got a chance to know Otto pretty well, and it was just a great guy, a lot of fun. And the first time I met him was at a celebrity golf tournament in Dayton, Ohio. I mean, this was a big time event. This was in the mid 70s, where Bob Hope, Glenn Campbell, and those celebrities, President Ford, after he was out of office, was there. And so Otto comes up, he says, of course, Paul Brown sent in the plays and Paul was still the head coach, and he sent him in for Otto. And he says, "Kenny, have you ever just not liked the play that he sends in and you call it on your own?" And I said, "Otto," I said, I'm still a young guy. I really haven't done that. He says, "Let me give you one tip. If you ever do, make sure it works."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Hey, Ken, we've got some questions here before we talk a little bit about the modern Bengals, the Joe Burrow era, if you will. Uniform changes. You partook in this. You were, you had the old school, what do they call them? The pumpkin heads, right? With the lettering on the side of the helmet. And then you made the major transition. And that was the year that you guys went to the Super Bowl there. So what do you expect, if anything? I don't know if you got any inside info from the organization. Are you expecting any major changes? It sounds like there's not going to be any to the helmet, but What would you like to see, and what are you expecting to see in terms of a uniform change?
I don't know. I just remember that year we came out with the stripes on the helmets. We're going, oh my God! I think it was Collinsworth that said, "God, we better be good because they'll laugh us out of the league if we are." I don't know. This is the area of young people that want a little flash and all that other thing. The only thing that I wish is that for their alternative uniforms, they would go back to the old school.
Yes.
The orange helmet with the Bengals on the stripes and the stripes on the sleeves of the uniforms. I think that would be a classy move to do that. I know now, it's been their orange jerseys have been their alternative jerseys, but I would like to see, okay, we're going to go throwback. I mean, the Steelers have gone back to the Bumblebee jersey. If we're going to throwback, let's go throwback.
I love it.
40 years later, those helmets are still around, so they must be doing something right.
Well, I'll tell you what's really cool is that I go ahead for the foundation and I buy the old school helmets, and with the double bar face mask that I wore, it's got the mesh on the inside, and then I take them down to the Bengals equipment guy, and he takes off the Bengals on one side and puts stripes on it, so it's the old and the new.
Ooh.
So if you want something unique, go to KenAndersonAlliance.org and we can get you one of those helmets.
This is why he's the greatest. He plugs his own stuff out of nowhere. He's the GOAT. He's the GOAT.
Well no, and we got a great T-shirt, and my wife designed this one. We were at a store here in Hilton Head, and we went in, and there's a T-shirt up there, and there was Dale Earnhardt Jr. and his father underneath that just said Legends. So we came up with one. It's Isaac Curtis and I, and underneath it just says Legends. So that's a hot item too. So if you need some shopping, if you need old school jerseys, if you need helmets, T-shirts, we got a lot of stuff. Go to KenAndersonAlliance.org and shop with us.
All right, Ken, let's go ahead and transition more towards the current Bengals. This was obviously Joe Burrow's rookie season. It ended a little bit shorter than what we would have liked it to do, but we're in a new offseason, a new year, and Bengals appear to be primed to continue to build around him. So I guess, what were your initial impressions on Burrow's first year? And if you were, the one making the decisions about how to best build around him, what would you do in free agency to build up the offensive line, enhance the receiving corps? What do you think they need to do to continue helping him?
Well, I think, the first thing is, I think it's obvious to everybody, he's the real deal. He is a big time quarterback, and, not only for what he does on the field, but I think the leadership qualities that he shows. And, we've been dealing with the pandemic, we've been dealing with racial injustice, and to see that as a rookie, he is the leader of the team. He is the forefront of the issues that face the team, and he's done an outstanding job. I'm very, very proud of him and the job that he's done. But I go back to when I was successful. It's, I got, Bob Johnson, as the center, and Vernon Holland was a number one pick. Rufus Mays was a number one pick. The guards were good. Then Lapham comes, and all of a sudden, when the line starts to falter, I go down, and then here comes Max Montoya. Here comes Blair Bush, the number one draft choice. Here comes Anthony Munoz. Here comes Mike Wilson. When the line got good again, I got good again. So I think, it's critical that we put five guys up in front of him that can protect him. I think we've got weapons, but, you've got to give the quarterback a chance.
I know that my co-host has a question for you that plays on that Munoz name in just a minute, so I'm going to let him ask this one. But since you brought up Legends and number 85, I want to ask you what you thought about T. Higgins. He looks like the next in line of one of the great 85s in terms of wide receivers for this team. What does he bring to this team, and how much did he impress you in his rookie campaign?
Well, just the consistency. He just played so well, made all the catches, and all of a sudden, you've got him and you've got Tyler Boyd. I think we've got some tight ends. We've got running backs, between Mixon and Giovanni Bernard. So I think we've got the weapons in the backfield on the outside. And to be able to utilize those weapons, I think we've got to be able to solidify things up front.
So, Ken, I don't know how much that you follow the draft, but there's a offensive tackle coming into the NFL. His name is Penei Sewell from Oregon. And believe it or not, Mel Kiper Jr. multiple times now within the past few weeks or so has compared him to Anthony Munoz, Sewell being a left tackle and, being athletic and all. But, as a guy who played with Munoz for 5 years and like one of the last 5 years of your careers, like what does it take for a 20-year-old? Sewell is 20 years old, for him to be compared to the greatest offensive tackle in the game. Like what traits would you expect him to have in order to live up to that comparison of the Bengals Hall of Fame left tackle?
Well, number one, you can't compare anybody to Anthony Munoz. He's the best that's ever played the position of left tackle, in the National Football League. If he can come anywhere close to that, he'll be a great player. But, I think what was, so great about Anthony was his athletic ability. He was a big man, but had such great feet and great athletic ability that, he was one of those guys. It was easy to design your pass protection. You take that left defensive end, you'd X him out. Anthony's got him. How can we handle the other 4 or the other 3 guys with our 4? So we could double somebody because Anthony's got, his guy. I guess, I think I heard today on the radio that he's not playing in the Senior Bowl. So I guess it's kind of hard to evaluate. I don't know. But, apparently he's the best of the bunch.
Yeah, he looks pretty good. I saw a lot of him. He didn't play this year because of opting out of the season and the shortened season in general for a lot of teams. But the year before, I saw him play and protect Hubbard. Saw a lot of him. He's a very impressive player. Ken, I'm going to throw you
you must stay up late to watch those West Coast games.
Sometimes I do. It would be very late for you guys.
You get to be my age, you go to bed early.
Well, I want to talk about your charity. I want to promote the heck out of that, and we will in just a second. I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball here, Ken. My co-host just mentioned Mel Kiper Jr. What would your scouting report on yourself be as a quarterback coming into the draft? What kind of evaluations would you make for yourself? I guess, especially now reflecting on your Hall of Fame career. What should be a Hall of Fame career. What kind of evaluation would you give yourself? What kind of characteristics and things in a scouting report would you say?
Well, I wish you would have given me that question a little bit earlier, because I just found, I think it was from the Bengals website through Hobson, that they had the original scouting report the Bengals had on me coming out of college. Everything was handwritten in those days, and the first guy that saw me was Pete Brown, and then Mike Brown came out personally to watch me at Augustana. In those days, the draft was in January, so all the Bengals coaches went out and scouted on the weekend. So Bill Walsh came to Waukesha, Wisconsin, and saw me play against Carroll College before he caught a flight that night to Cleveland for the Bengals playing the Browns the next day. So, I don't know. I think it was, one of the reports was that, the competition I played was kind of a good high school level in Ohio. I think at the point, I had the size, I had the speed, I had the arm strength, I had the release. And they thought, Bill Walsh especially thought that he could mold me into the quarterback that he wanted me to be. And and I think when I went out, for all the years coaching, when I went out and scouted, the first thing I looked at was the quarterback's throwing mechanics, because, you can't change those, but I always looked at the mechanics. You try to get in ahead, and, that's kind of a tough one to figure out. And I didn't, I was told the quarterbacks at the combine, I really don't look at your work on the field. I look at your throwing mechanics. I look at your arm strength. I can't change those. I don't care how you drop back. I'm looking to see if you're athletic enough. I can coach you, if you're athletic enough, how I want you to drop back. So, I think it would have been tough for a guy like me today, from a Division III school. I think we were 3-6 my senior year to get a sniff at the National Football League.
Talking with Ken Anderson, we're gonna ask him about the Ken Anderson Alliance and the work that they're doing and how our listeners can get involved. Before I do, just a couple more comments here from the live chat. Johnny Mason saying, "Great show, love Ken Anderson." Robert Obrecht, a longtime listener of our show. Be sure to thank Ken on behalf of all of us fans for his time and effort in being a Bengals legend. You, sir, are a legend, and we do thank you for your time. Please tell us. I'm gonna share the website here on our screen. Please tell us a bit about the Ken Anderson Alliance, how fans can get involved and support your charity, especially in this very unique time where not a lot of in-person events and fundraising events are available.
Well, our goal is to create live, work, and engage opportunities for adults with developmental disabilities. Our engage opportunities, it's been tough because of the pandemic to get people out. And we like to take them out in small groups into the community, whether it's out to dinner, whether it's to a hockey game, a baseball game, a movie, and that's been a little bit tough right now. So a lot of things that we're doing is virtual. The other thing that we're doing work-wise is we have an aquaponics venture going up on the west side where we sell lettuce. So it's our O2 Farms where we're employing people and growing lettuce. You can go to KenAndersonAlliance.org to find more about that. And, for our live opportunities, we have bought property out on the west side in Springfield Township where we're going to build a community for adults with developmental disabilities where they can live to their fullest potential. So I'm really excited about that. And as you said, a lot of our fundraising events have been canceled in the last year due to the pandemic. We do have an event coming up February 28th. It's Autism Rocks. Normally, we're at a small convention center with 3 rooms, and in 2 of the rooms we have bands playing continuously from noon to 7 a.m. We got 14 bands during the day. We have another room with our silent auction. Most of that is going to be virtual this year. We've got 1 band playing at a time in a smaller venue. It's only sponsors there. I will not be there this year. Normally I'm there with a lot of my former teammates, a lot of celebrities, but you can go ahead and watch it virtually. And I will tell you this, today, when you talk about music, you talk about Bengals, the only one you can talk about is Mike Reed. Well, he will be making a performance virtually for us.
Oh, cool.
And which is great. And also Jada Marcus from Rascal Flatts will be singing a song for us virtually. We'll have, silent auctions, raffles going on at the same time. So to find more about that, go to KenAndersonAlliance.org.
You mentioned earlier some new stuff, and if fans want to make a donation and get some cool stuff, there is a whole line of stuff here on Ken Anderson Alliance: polos, autographed footballs. I myself have the old school Ken Anderson autographed jersey because those are playing out there. What's that?
The best jerseys ever.
Yeah, yeah. So you can see a lot of cool stuff here. So fans, if you want some of that stuff while helping a great cause go on there, and I want to make an announcement on behalf of this show, we will be purchasing and donating to the Ken Anderson Alliance. We'll be getting some of these items, making a donation to Ken Anderson Alliance. And what we'll do throughout the next handful of episodes is we're gonna have some of those items, and we're gonna have giveaways on the show to our listeners and make a donation on behalf of the show to your foundation, Ken, because I think what you're doing is awesome, and the amount of time that you have given us on your appearances on this program means a ton.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate that. And when you go on there, some of the items we have are bath bombs, for example. Well, our are making those. We have different greeting cards that you can buy. Our adults are making those. So some of the items that we have on there are actually being made by the adults that we serve. And, it's exciting. We've just, moved into a new facility. We've absorbed another nonprofit with us. We're expanding the things that we do. We're expanding our services. We're getting ready to go for our capital campaign to go ahead and raise the money to build our community. So just so many exciting things that are going on. And, I couldn't be more proud of our staff that we have. I couldn't be more proud of our board. And I'm really proud of the things that we've been able to accomplish. And, just one of our adults, for example, is a guy knows Zach, and he likes his beer too, and he likes to catch a football, and I call him Rag Arm because he can't throw very well, but he calls me back Rag Arm in return. So we've developed a relationship with so many of our adults, and they're great people. And like I say, we're just trying to let them live their lives to the fullest of their capabilities.
Well, it's an awesome cause. I know a lot of us have people in our lives that this just resonates with us. So it's an amazing cause. We're going to continue to support it. We'd love to have you back on sometime in the near future, talk some more Bengals, talk about your foundation. If there's any other events or anything you want us to promote, whether you come on the show or not, we would be happy to do that. But we can't thank you enough for your time, Ken.
Well, I tell you what, you guys, you've got my number. Anytime you need me, you call me, and I'll be glad to do it. And like I say, all the things that we're doing, if you go to KenAndersonAlliance.org, they're laid out there. You'll get a chance. The community is laid out. It's designed. It's going to be beautiful. There's a ball field on there that will get a lot of use. And I've got commitments from the Bengals, from FC Cincinnati, and from the Reds that they're all going to participate in making that field a reality, where it'll not only be used by our adults that are living there, but different youth teams can come in there and practice. We can have special Olympic events there. So it'll be really a community, field, and just, to have the support of the three professional teams in Cincinnati with this project makes me so proud. But like I say, we've got a great website at KenAndersonAlliance.org. Go there, check things out. You'll find out everything you need to know.
Yep.
You heard him. Do it.
Yep. Please support them. Please support them. Charities and nonprofits need assistance now more than ever, and this is a great cause for a great man and a great Bengals player. Thank you so much, Ken Anderson. Thank you so much for the time. You gave us way more than I had hoped for, so I'm stoked, and I know our fans are as well.
Do me one favor. Just don't wait this long to call me again. I have a good time with you guys. I'd love to come back on again.
I appreciate that. We will have you back on very soon. Stay well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, guys.
Ken.
Thank you. That's Ken Anderson, Bengals legend, number 14. Go to KenAndersonAlliance.org and go donate. Get yourself some swag. We're going to donate as well on our behalf, on the show's behalf. And like I said, we're going to have some stuff, John, that will be given away to listeners, and we'll be however we want to do that. I guess we'll be doing it through the listener questions live, answering if they want to answer some trivia or what have you. But I want to do that. I want to support not only just what he's doing, but it's a really cool and for a very cool guy. So that was awesome, man. That was awesome.
That was awesome. And like I like how he has like a portrait of himself, like I do, behind me. It was like a nice like oil painting with his mustache. Yeah. But I wanted to ask him this, but I wanted to ask him if he had seen any of these Tom Flores commercials where Coors Light is campaigning to get Tom Flores, the two-time Super Bowl winning head coach for the Raiders, into the Hall of Fame.
Do we still have him? Okay.
How about on a Keystone Light can?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you.
What the heck? I mean, I'm doing Keystones with Kenny, from my garage. I've got a Keystone Light neon. The least I can do is put me on a can.
It's easy money. It's easy money. I will buy Keystones exclusively.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
When you went there, I had to come back on for that plug.
Exactly.
But yeah, that is, by the way, talk about real quick while we got you back. Keystones with Kenny. You're doing that show too, Ken, right?
Yeah, kind of stay tuned. We took a pause after the Christmas holidays. I mean, I've had, Chris Collinsworth on. I've had Johnny Bench on. Dan Fouts on, Archie Manning on. We've had great Dan Issel, Doug Flynn. We've had a couple of comedians on that are friends of mine. So stay tuned for that, because we have a great time. I have a studio set up in my garage. My wife is the executive producer. Her main job is to feed me Keystone Lights, because it is a happy hour that we do. So it's a lot of fun, and that way I can write off my garage now, as a studio.
It's amazing.
So it serves, a multi-purpose room now. But no, that's fun. Keystone Light has been very good to me. They made me up my own neon. In fact, I was trying to figure out, I was going to use that as my background tonight, and I couldn't figure out how to do that. So the next time I'll have that figured out by the time we do the show.
That's awesome. Real quick, while we got you back, we've got when's the book coming out? And not The Art of Quarterbacking. By the way, my brother has that book, The Art of Quarterbacking. That you're in that one. You gonna write a book sometime soon to do a memoir, something like that?
No. The title of when I go out to speak, the title of my talk is "My Career as I Remember It." I make no attempt to get dates, facts, or statistics correct. So my wife has already given me a journal, and it's embossed with my career as I remember it. And the goal is to write down all my stories for my grandkids to be able to tell. So that may be in the works, but I'm finding out in retirement, I'm almost too busy. My golf game is suffering. Of course, the foundation takes up a lot of time, and I'm doing a lot of other things. But I got to, number one is get my golf game back where it should be. So that's the first goal. Then maybe work on that book. We'll see. Well,
we hope you will. That would be, based on some of the stories you've shared with us, in your couple of appearances with us, that would be a fun read, to say the very least.
Well, like I say, sometimes I embellish things a little bit. That's how I remember it. I ask people, please don't check for the factual accuracy sometimes of my stories, but that's why it's my career as I remember it.
Well, that's a title right there, John, right?
Ken Anderson fell down in the AFC Championship. That is facts. There's no need to fact check that.
Ken, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. And I'm glad you rejoined us for that Keystone with Kenny plug. I like that.
Well, like I say, don't wait so long to call me back again. I have fun with you guys.
We love it. We appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
And that's the painting I got from when I was MVP of the league. That's why it's on the wall, and it's a great shot of the porno stash back in the day.
It's epic. It's up there with Burt Reynolds and Tom Selleck. It's an all-timer for sure.
Well, I'm glad you guys like it.
I do. I can't grow one like that. I wish I could. But
well, I can't grow anything down here, but I was pretty good right around in there.
It's an epic one. Ken, we'll have you back on soon. Thank you so much. KenAndersonAlliance.org. Go to the website, donate, and help out his great foundation. Ken, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Wow. Got him back. A little take two. I love it. We're just gonna
be doing the show, and he's gonna pop in out of nowhere. I'm gonna have no idea he's waiting on deck.
He's got the you said the magic word, Keystone, and he was in our backstage and he was waving. I'm like, oh, we got to bring him back in. So Ken Anderson, wow, gave us 40 minutes, almost 45 minutes. I can't even believe it. I am ecstatic. I don't know how we follow that up, John. We probably should have just let him. I keep going. I would have talked to him forever. It's just I keep getting starstruck with him when he comes on the program, and a lot of our listeners would like to listen to him a bit more than us, but we do have a couple of other things to get to, I guess. That was awesome, dude. That was just awesome. No other way to put it.
Yeah, Anthony's always telling me that, we're trying to get guests and whatnot. I'm always thinking, how are we going to get guests that are better than Ken Anderson? We might as well just bring him on every single time.
Yeah, and like I said, we're going to donate and buy some products from our donations. We're going to buy some stuff as a show, and we will be giving away that stuff that we get for you. And that doesn't excuse you from making a donation. You guys as listeners got to go out there and donate, but we're going to do some stuff, and we're going to try and help out his foundation and have a little fun with it, have some giveaways. We'll determine what that looks like. But our thanks to Ken Anderson for the immense amount of time that he gave us, and all the insight, the fun chats. He's hilarious. Go to KenAndersonAlliance.org and help out a charity. John, where I lost track of where I think we have I think we're going to do a state your case, right?
Yes, we are. We're going to do the third edition of State Your Case. We've had a free agency one with the guards, Brandon Scherf and Joe Tooney. We've had a draft one with Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith. We're going to go keep it within the current roster for this one. There was something that came on Twitter today that I saw. It was something about like Sam Hubbard and like contract projections and stuff like that. And I believe it was Tracy McBrady at Twitter, good friend of the show, who basically said that, yeah, if the Bengals are paying Sam Hubbard like north of $10 million a year for his extension, you might as well let someone else pay that and whatnot. And I got to thinking, this kind of is a little bit similar to how I felt with Joe Mixon last year. And I started to think about it a little bit more. And I came to the conclusion that, in all honesty, Sam Hubbard is kind of like the Joe Mixon of the defense. Whereas I think we all know who Sam Hubbard is. Great guy. He was on our show a couple times. Phenomenal person. Does a lot of work around the Cincinnati area. He's a Cincinnati native. But I think the Bengals front office and Bengals fans know exactly who he is as a player at this point, entering his fourth year of his career. And it's already kind of assumed that he's going to get extended, just like we all kind of knew that Joe Mixon was going to get extended by the Bengals this time last season. The thing is, though, like it all really depends on the price, because obviously with this year, with the cap dropping, there's a little bit less flexibility, but then it skyrockets back up back in 2021. It'll go over $200 million or whatever it's going to be with the typical growth and whatnot. But with a guy like Sam Hubbard, it just seems like kind of like Mixon, where he's a really good player and he does well with the things that he does do well, but the question is always value. And I think that question can be asked in the exact same way with Hubbard. And we can look at this like, let's compare Sam Hubbard to Carl Lawson, like their first 3 years in the league. Lawson played like 9 less games and had 25 less starts compared to Hubbard. Hubbard was a lot more healthier, and he was starting because he was a quality run defender. The issue is Sam Hubbard's just not that good of a pass rusher. You look at his first 3 years in the league, he's only had 6 games, according to Pro Football Focus, with a pass rushing grade of 70 or higher, and only 2 of them with a grade of 80 or higher. You compare that to Lawson in his first 3 seasons, he had 12 games of a pass rushing grade of 70 or higher and 4 games of a pass rushing grade of 80 or higher. So I think we can all safely say that Sam Hubbard is not really ever going to develop into the type of pass rusher that Carl Lawson is. And the Bengals are going to try to pay Carl Lawson a lot of money this offseason. So in my opinion, like, Sam Hubbard has to be looked at the same way of Joe Mixon, whereas, he's a great guy and he's a great guy for the locker room and he does the things that he does well. But if you have to pay him a lot of money to keep him around, it almost might be better to just let someone else do that.
I have a question and then I have a statement. I guess I have a question for you. Would you be saying that if the sack numbers were more on par this past year to what we saw the first couple of years? He had 14 and a half combined in his first 2 seasons, only 2 this year, and he missed some time with the elbow injury. Would you still be kind of having that same where is the value question at that point, or would it still be he is who he is in your mind? I'm just curious where your head's at with that.
I think he still is who he is, because you look at those like PFF has him for 6 sacks in his rookie year and 9 sacks in 2019, but the overall consistency in terms of just winning as a pass rusher, it was basically the same. Like, and we all kind of know that sacks are a little bit misleading, where it's a lot of what happens around you, and it's a lot of it has to do with what the quarterback's doing. A lot of his sacks in his career have been a lot of cleanups. Now, there have been clean wins, but I remember back in his rookie year, he went up against Colt Miller, the rookie left tackle, and he beat him cleanly like a couple times. Yeah, like just this past year, he had his best game of the season against the Texans, and God only knows who those tackles were for Houston. So a lot of his sacks, a lot of his like quality sacks, have not really come against quality opponents, and there's just too many times where he's just basically a non-factor in the passing game. Now, granted to him, phenomenal run defender. I think he was ESPN's top run defending edge defender in terms of run stop win rate, where he was like tops in the league for the weeks that he did play. He's phenomenal at that, and that's essentially why he's going to get paid, because that's where his value is. But that value does not matter necessarily for edge rushers if they can't rush the quarterback. Like, if you're on the edge and you're going to get paid a handsome amount of money, you need to be consistently winning as a pass rusher. Just like as a running back, if you're going to get paid a lot of money as a running back, you probably need to have some value in the passing game. That's not really ever been what Joe Mixon was really known for. And again, like the Bengals had room for Joe Mixon and they carved that out and they ended up paying him that. But it's going to take a lot for Joe Mixon to be worth what he's being paid. And I think it's along the same lines of Hubbard, where he's going to need to develop into a pass rusher that he's never been before in order to be kind of worth, an extension in the range of like the 10 million range, which seems to be what the rumor was, according to Paul Ding Jr. of The Athletic, when he was talking about him and Bates' potential extensions in a recent article. So it is a realistic question of value here.
Being the resident fence writer, I guess, on this show, I both agree and disagree with you in some elements that you're talking about here. I'm in agreement with you in the way that, you look back to even some of the more productive. I think he had 8.5 sacks last year with the Bengals. He had 2 in the opener against Seattle, and then goose eggs the next 3 games, 1 in week 5, goose eggs the next 4 or 5 games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. And then he ends the year with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 in the last 5 games. So like Mixon, he's really streaky, and the stats usually come, and it's not really their fault. It's an entire team thing, but the stats usually come at the end of the season when the season is out of reach, and the Bengals may be playing some, lesser opponents or teams that may be down here. I mean, you look at last year, there's a Jets team in there that he got a sack against. He had a sack against Miami, and then a Cleveland team that had packed it in the final week. He had a sack and a half. So, look, I don't want to discredit. I mean, you got the stats. I don't want to discredit that. And, I guess there's just that streaky nature sometimes that frustrates you. Carlos Dunlap was the same way. Kind of playing in both the fence rider thing. I see a lot of kind of a Robert Gathers career trajectory here. A guy that was effective against the run, a guy that was a very, very highly valued locker room guy, would get the occasional sack, would get the occasional big play via turnover, that sort of thing, but would sort of frustrate you as to say, well, this guy isn't really giving you all that much from a pass rush standpoint. I give Sam Hubbard, though, a little bit of a pass this year because of the injury and because of the injuries around him. And, when you look at extending him, I think the Bengals need to extend him for a reasonable deal because they need pass rushers, John. They need guys. And even though Hubbard isn't overly effective at it, I think he's still a solid supporting cast member. And I've said this before, if you get the guy on the edge, whether it's a high draft pick, a premium player in free agency, and you're able to supplement that with a Lawson, you're able to supplement that with a Hubbard, you've got a nice stable of defensive ends and edge players there, I think. You're muted, I think.
You say Robert Gathers. I think like Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson, another fantastic player for his role, a guy who was valued in that locker room. And the Bengals, they let him play out his contract, and then he exploded with like a 13-sack season. But they're like, yeah, this hasn't really happened before. We're going to let you go on the franchise tag and try to do it again. And he still had a decent season that year, but they realized that he was going to get a lot of money on the market, but he was just never that type of player. Tampa Bay signed into a mega extension. They cut him after that year. Bengals re-signed him to a more modest deal, a deal that he rightfully should have deserved. That was more in his ballpark. That seems exactly what it is with Sam Hubbard. Whereas if Sam Hubbard explodes this season, he could make a lot of money on the open market if he doesn't get extended, and the Bengals would be wise to let him test that and to see what happens with that. But he's along the same lines for me, like that, like a guy who just doesn't really win that much as a pass rusher, but a guy who can set the edge and give you versatility and athleticism there. Like, I agree with you. I think an extension is warranted. It's just a matter of if the price is too much for what he brings, you got to be flexible. You got to say, okay, if his actual value isn't as high as what he expects to get and what other teams are going to pay for him, that's when you have to make that adjustment. The same thing with Michael Johnson. The Bengals were wise to not give him a multi-year deal, and then they ended up winning. They got a compensatory pick for him, and they paid him a more modest deal. That's essentially what should happen with Hubbard. And now, if they extend him before the season, they can control the language and the size of the extension that they give him. But if they're going out and paying him like a top tier edge rusher, that's a no for me.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that, I don't think. Like I said, I think he's a good kind of supporting guy, a guy you have in there for, probably a good 2-down type of edge player, maybe a 1-down at certain points, but, a good player. I do say, Antoine Malone, good friend of the show, he was a beast when he came back from injury this year. If you look at the end, again, the streakiness at the end of the season that I mentioned before, you look at, he had 10 tackles against Miami, 10 combined tackles, 6 against Dallas. And then you look towards the end of the year, he finished the year with 6 total quarterback hits in the final 3 games, and then the big forced fumble against Houston there. So, I mean, a little bit of a streaky nature at the end of the season there. But again, for me, I see what you're saying, but I also see the value. But I think you and I are kind of in agreement. What does that contract look like? That's what this all depends on. If this contract is kind of outrageous, then that's not going to look like a great deal at this point. But the Bengals also, John, what I'm worried about is if they lose Carl Lawson, they may be forced to overpay for a guy like Hubbard just to have someone that's at least capable on this roster.
That's 100% true. And I think that's why they're going to be more aggressive to re-sign Lawson than, I guess, compared to maybe William Jackson, because they know once they lose Lawson, they're back to square zero. Like if Sam Hubbard is your best edge rusher, you have a major problem with rushing the passer. So I do think that they're going to find a way to bring back Lawson, and then that'll give them more comfort in their negotiations with Hubbard. And also, ultimately, I do think it will happen, and I think it will end up being a good decision. But it's just in the back of my mind a little bit, if it exceeds a price point where now you're entering a territory where it's actually good pass rushers, you might have an issue there. But the good news is they can, work the deal, make it a low cap hit this season with a low salary cap, and then the cap explodes next season. You can give them a little bit more cash flow there. They can work it out.
I hope so. It would be nice to have both those guys back in the stable. You just limit the amount of needs that you go into the draft with, and I know the Bengals like to do that. They like to not have super glaring needs heading into the draft, which is odd to say with a team that's picking number 5 overall, but they like to operate that way. Speaking of free agency, what the Bengals are going to do, we've got one more free agency spotlight we're going to give you today. And last week it was Darrell Williams, correct, John? The offensive tackle from the Buffalo Bills that you spotlighted for us, and you did a great job there. We're going to stick on the offensive line because there's a lot of chatter about the Bengals doing something along the offensive line in free agency. And some people hope it's one of the high-profile guards in Fortuni. John and I think, are a little bit more realistic in terms of what this team does in free agency. Usually, I know last year was an exception, but what this team does in outside free agency usually, where their budget may be, and what they may look to upgrade. We heard Dave Lapham talk about the fact that the Bengals are going to maybe look at upgrading tackle instead of guard, and maybe interior offensive lineman is more, something they work with in the draft and mix in with the guys that they have on the roster already. So this week I'm gonna talk about Matt Filer, the offensive lineman of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not necessarily a household name, a guy who kind of was in and out of the lineup for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but a guy who I wouldn't say, just absolutely shocked the world and was this amazing player, but a guy who was capable, John, and a guy who is steady, and a guy who stepped in at right tackle for them when they had some problems over the past couple of years and played some decent football. 65 overall Pro Football Focus grade this past year, played over 800 snaps. I think he also, primarily right guard, I'd have to look at right tackle rather. I think he's also got a little bit of time, some snaps at guard. I'd have to double check that, but I primarily looked at him as a right tackle, and this would be a guy who would compete with or potentially replace Bobby Hart as at right tackle for the Cincinnati Bengals. He'd be 29 this season, so he's not overly old. He's still on the better side of 30. You could probably get him on a manageable deal. He was a guy that's on Pro Football Focus's top 100 free agent list this year. So he's a guy that is respected out there. Now, when I looked at some film, and I think it was on Steelers Depot to give them some credit, you can check out, among other places that I looked at, but Steelers Depot was one that I looked at. And some of the stuff was from 2019. And what I saw, John, on film was, good handwork and some good work in terms of working in unison with the guard, which would be David DeCastro. David DeCastro is excellent, but good work with him in terms of, they'd pull DeCastro and Filer would kick inside for a down block and worked nicely. There were a couple of nice plays that I saw in the film that I saw where he was kind of holding the point of attack. I would say his feet aren't the best in terms of athleticism or super quick feet. He was an undrafted guy. So, I think he's a guy that could at least, I don't think he would be outstanding, but I think he's a guy that could help out in that zone scheme a bit. He's a guy that could bring some steadiness to the right tackle position. Bobby Hart's a little bit too peaks and valleys, and that's being generous because I think a lot of the peaks were this year as opposed to the other years. So those are some of the observations I made, and he could be had on an affordable deal, a more affordable deal than some of the other names out there, Taylor Moton, et cetera.
So yeah, there are a couple things here because I think Filer would be a guy that you would find on the second or third wave of free agency. And I think ultimately the Bengals are probably going to sign 2 starters at offensive line, but both of those guys aren't going to be the premier players at their position. So Filer would be a guy that they would sign, a week or 2 into free agency for a modest deal, like you said. And I think what's important here is that, like you said, he played right tackle for a couple seasons in 2018, 2019. 2019 was a turning point because that's when Mike Munchak left Pittsburgh, the offensive line coach, for the same position with the Denver Broncos. And that's kind of like the start of the decline of that position group. Mike Munchak meant so much for that Steelers offensive line and for the development of just great players there. And for some of those players, they kind of saw like a downturn in their production and their quality of play, but Filer was not one of them. He continued to be a solid piece at right tackle with Ramon Foster at left guard that season. Ramon Foster then retires at the end of the 2019 season. Filer then moves into left guard and starts that season and continues to play at a solid level. Like the offensive line was an issue for the Steelers this season, but Filer was not one of the liabilities. And like you said, a guy who's only played like 4 seasons, but it has been like 7 years in the league. He's approaching 30, and a guy who not a lot of people know about. I don't think he's going to demand that much in free agency, but at the same time, it's an offensive lineman. It's a quality offensive lineman, and there could be like an emerging market for him out of nowhere because teams are just desperate for that quality of play. But if the Bengals have like a solid tackle that they sign in free agency and they're looking to fill one of the guard spots, they could do a lot worse than Filer.
Yeah, and again, he could play a couple of different positions. I looked at some of the tackle work he did. Could kick inside for you. He's a big dude. I think he's 6'6", 330, something like that. So, I mean, you could work him potentially at a couple of different places. If the Bengals are still overly committed to Bobby Hart at right tackle, maybe it is an option that they explore for kicking him inside because he's done both, like you said there. So, I kind of am a little more enamored based on some of the film that I watched and some of the commentary I heard about him at right tackle. I may be a little bit more enamored there. However, the limited athleticism that I saw on tape also worries me as a continuing starting tackle. So, just a guy that he's not just a guy. He can be serviceable. I think he can be a decent starting player on your offensive line and improvement of what they currently have for a reasonable price.
Yeah. And I honestly don't know off the top of my head. Have the Bengals ever signed like a former Steeler, aside from James Harrison? I guess that's like the one example I can think of. Like right after they played for the Steelers, have the Bengals ever signed a free agent that just played for the Steelers aside from James Harrison? That would be an interesting trivia question.
Yeah, I remember. I think they had a guy, Myron Bell, years ago who was a safety. I think he played for the Steelers and then he played for the Bengals, if I remember correctly. Might be a couple other instances like that, but I think primarily some of them would be a little bit more towards the end of their careers, over the hill, if you will. And I think this would be a guy who's kind of right in the middle of his career in terms of Matt Filer. So go check him out. Go check out some of the stuff on Steelers Depot and other film there. I think there's some value there. Versatility, ability, familiarity with the AFC North and, going up against those defenses that's something that has value there. So, and the Bengals now, brought in Marion Hobby, and they are hoping to retool that defensive line, and they brought in Frank Pollock on the offensive side now. So, they're hoping, I would think he maybe is looking to – I think Frank Pollock wouldn't mind having a guy from the Pittsburgh Steelers side of things personally, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know if you have a sense on that, John. But
I think he just wants guys who can play because he knows that most of the guys here can't.
Yeah. Well, that's our free agency spotlight. Matt Filer, an offensive lineman that could play a couple of different spots for the Cincinnati Bengals, and a guy that I think could be a decent little pickup for a reasonable price going forward, and a name that I don't think a lot of Bengals fans may be overly familiar with, but one that they should kind of keep on the periphery, I think. What do you say we drop the mic and get out of here? We've gone a little long, but I think that's okay given our special guest we had tonight.
Yeah, I would agree. So this week in past years, I'm usually down in Mobile, Alabama. I'm usually joining Anthony inside like a hotel room just outside of just right next to the Gulf of Mexico. But with COVID and everything, I decided to stand pat here and let the professionals handle that type of stuff. But I want to give a shout out to Owen Reese, who is a friend that I met down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl a couple years ago. He was a grad assistant at Wisconsin Whitewater, which is a D3 school, and they actually have a player down there at the Senior Bowl. Wow, his name is escaping me, but he is an interior offensive lineman going up against some high quality competition, and he's showing out down there. So Owen was a integral part of bringing his name into the attention of the Senior Bowl and why he eventually got invited there, and he's making the most of it. So in recent years, I'm sorry, what?
Is it Dylan Radunes? Is that who you're talking about?
Dylan. No, is he from North Dakota State?
Yeah.
No.
Radunz. It's not that guy. I heard that guy.
No.
Well, anyways, get in your tracks. I apologize.
No, but like in recent years, there have been some small school offensive linemen that have really showed out in the Senior Bowl, and this kid looks like he's next in line for that type of stuff. So, I mean, who knows what the Bengals are going to do in the offensive line in the draft? If they miss out on some free agents, they'll definitely look at the draft to kind of replace that type of stuff. But shout out to Owen for his work to getting his guy down there, and hopefully he does well in the Senior Bowl and maybe even gets drafted. So definitely got to look out for though.
You got a Twitter handle or anything for Owen?
Yeah, at Reese Draft.
Okay, cool. Aside from, of course, wanting to reiterate to all of our listeners, live and or afterward, to go to kenandersonalliance.org and donate. Get yourself a product. If you want to donate that way, we are going to donate, get some products, and we're going to do giveaways. So we'll let you know about that. Aside from that, there is a longtime colleague. He did some stuff for Cincy Jungle for a while, and he does some Bengals podcast stuff. His name is Mickey Mentzer. I think he's been on our show once or twice a long time ago. But at any rate, he got a job, John, recently. He was kind of covering the Bengals and stuff. He got a job with the Cincinnati Reds. Doing some working pretty intimately with the assistant GM and other high ups, doing a lot of their their data stuff, analytics, and kind of working in all that. So he's at Houday Fans on Twitter. He just got a cool job. I think he just announced it. At least he did on Facebook. I'm friends with him there and some other places. So that's a pretty cool deal, and I wanted to congratulate him on that. That's a pretty cool gig.
Absolutely. Quinn Meinerz, Meinerz, offensive lineman, Wisconsin Whitewater. That's the guy's name.
Yeah. So okay. Well, any idea where he's supposed to be? Maybe slated to go.
I have no idea. Like Ben Barch, the guy last year from God knows where, he ended up going in like the 4th round of the Jags, but he's making an impression. He can play multiple spots on the offensive line, so definitely got to watch out for.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, John, and thanks to Ken Anderson. This was an amazing episode, and not so much because of us, but because of not so much definitely because of me. John always brings it, but our special guest, Ken Anderson, I can't believe he came back on, dude. That was so funny. He was chilling in the back, and I saw him waving his hands. I'm like, oh, we got to bring him back on. But good stuff from Ken Anderson, and we look forward to having him on again, talking Cincinnati Bengals, reminiscing about his career. John, have a good week, bud.
Yeah, you too, man.
All right, take it easy, everybody.